All right, let's get right into it. It's a question we all ask ourselves, right? Can what we eat actually help us live longer, healthier lives? It's a massive question, and today we're going to unpack the science and see what some really fascinating research tells us. I want you to think about your last grocery run. You're pushing the cart, grabbing stuff for the week. It all seems pretty normal. But what if some of those everyday items in your cart are, well, quietly taking years off your life? It's kind of a shocking thought, but it's something new research is really forcing us to look at. So, let's start with a big one, a major warning sign coming from our modern diet. Because, before we can figure out what we should be adding to our plates, we kind of need to know what we should be avoiding. And the main culprit here has a name, ultra-processed foods. You'll hear them called UPFs. Now, this isn't about your regular canned beans or frozen broccoli. Nope. We're talking about these industrial-made things. Stuff with a crazy long list of ingredients that sound like they were made in a lab, not a kitchen. Think of your packaged cookies, sugary cereals, those instant noodle cups. So, what's the big deal? Well, a huge 30-year study published in the BMJ found something pretty startling. People who ate the most of this stuff, we're talking about 7 servings a day, had a 4% higher risk of death from any cause. Now, I know what you're thinking. 4%? That doesn't sound like a lot. But think about it. That's a risk you're taking every single day. Over a lifetime, that really, really adds up. And this whole problem isn't just about what's on our plate. A massive chunk of our ultra-processed intake actually comes from what we drink. We're talking about all that hidden sugar in sodas, juices, even those fancy coffee drinks. And to give you a sense of the scale here, wow, the World Health Organization points out that just one can of soda can pack up to 40 grams of free sugars. That is literally 10 teaspoons of sugar. To put that in perspective, the WHO recommends staying under 6 teaspoons for the entire day for extra health benefits. One can just blows that completely out of the water. And it turns out not all of these UPFs are created equal. That same big study actually pointed out the worst offenders. The things most strongly linked to a higher risk of dying were ready-to-eat meat products, both sugary and artificially sweetened drinks, dairy-based desserts, and, those super convenient, ultra-processed breakfast foods. Okay, so that's the bad news. But what's the flip side? Let's totally shift gears and look at the people who seem to have already cracked this code, the folks living in the world's blue zones. Yeah, so while our modern diets are being linked to all these health risks, there are these incredible pockets around the globe where people are thriving well past 100. It's not a fluke, it's just normal for them. These blue zones offer such a powerful contrast and, honestly, a roadmap for how we could be eating. A researcher named Dan Buettner actually identified 5 of these places. You've got Sardinia in Italy, which is home to the world's longest-lived men. Then there's Okinawa, Japan, for the longest-lived women. Over in Costa Rica, you have Nicoya, where they talk about having a plan de vida, a sense of purpose. Then Ikaria, Greece, with that classic Mediterranean lifestyle. And get this, right here in the U.S., there's a community in Loma Linda, California, where Seventh-day Adventists live about a decade longer than the average American. A whole decade. And what's so wild is that even though they're all over the world, their diets have these incredible things in common. First off, they are overwhelmingly plant-based. Like 95% of what they eat comes from plants. They treat meat like a special treat, maybe eating it only 5 times a month. Fish, yeah, that's fine, eaten regularly but in small portions. And here's the big one. Beans are king. Fava beans, black beans, soy, lentils, you name it. They are the absolute cornerstone of every single one of these longevity diets. Now, if this is all starting to sound a little familiar, it definitely should. This whole way of eating is basically a cousin to the famous Mediterranean diet, right? Which, as you know, is constantly getting praised for being amazing for your heart and brain. It's all rooted in the same ideas: whole foods, lots of plants, and healthy fats. So we've got the problem, those ultra-processed foods, and we've got a solution from the blue zones. So what's the thread that ties it all together? Well, it's about shifting how we think, moving away from single foods and looking at the bigger picture. You know how it is. We get so caught up in this anxious cycle, obsessing over the latest superfood or totally demonizing one specific bad food. But all the evidence, from the blue zones to the latest research, it all points to a much better way. Focusing on your overall dietary pattern, the big picture. Frank Hu, he's a top nutrition professor at Harvard, he really nails it. He says,
More than any single food, it's the overall diet that matters. And that right there is the fundamental shift in thinking we need to make. It's not about one perfect meal. It's about the combined effect of all your meals.
But, and this is a really important but, we have to add a crucial layer of nuance here. Because when people hear eat more plants, it's really easy to misinterpret that. Here's the key takeaway. Just because something is plant-based doesn't automatically mean it's healthy. I mean, a diet of French fries, soda, and white bread is technically plant-based, right? So it's the quality of those plant foods that makes all the difference. And this chart from a huge meta-analysis just shows this difference so clearly. On one side, you have healthy plant-based diets, full of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and that's linked to a lower risk of death. But on the other side, you have unhealthy plant-based diets, packed with refined grains and sugary drinks, and that was actually linked to a higher risk. They have the opposite effect. Okay, so we've covered the problem, we've looked at the solution, and we've got the core principle down. Let's bring this all home. How can you actually build a plate that sets you up for a long, healthy life? Here are 4 simple, evidence-backed steps to get you started. Number 1, pile on the plants. Make them the star of the show for every meal. 2, swap your fats. Think extra virgin olive oil as your go-to instead of butter or margarine. 3, rethink your protein. Start treating meat like a side dish, not the main event, and lean into fish or legumes. And number 4, actively work to cut out that ultra-processed stuff and the added sugars we were talking about right at the start. And please remember, this is not about being perfect. This isn't some super restrictive diet. It's a flexible pattern. The goal here isn't perfection, it's just about creating a positive pattern, making the healthy choice the easy choice, one meal at a time. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Forget trying to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. Based on everything we've just talked about, what's one small, totally doable shift you can make to your plate today?